It's 11 p.m. and these are the headlines. Tensions rise in Congo. Algeria follows with deep concern the resumption of the conflict and calls for de-escalation while supporting the mediation efforts for dialogue and peace. Algeria's significant diplomatic achievements highly praised following its presidency of the UNSC in January, a presidency that has put forward Arab and African causes. And it's official, the European Union Court has struck down the trade and fisheries agreements with Morocco, with Western Sahara gaining international support once again. Welcome back, everyone. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that Algeria is following with deep concern the resumption of the conflict and the escalation in the Democratic Republic of Congo, urging restraint and escalation to create the conditions for responsible resumption of dialogue and negotiation to establish peace in the region. Algeria also endorsed the conclusions of special summits held by the East African Community and the Southern African Development Community, which call for sincere and good faith dialogue between the warring parties. Despite the challenging circumstances, Algeria expressed its support for Angolan President João Lourenço and Kenyan President William Ruto in their ongoing mediation efforts. President Abdelmadjid Tebboune has instructed State Minister and Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf to reach out to the foreign ministers of the countries involved in the conflict and mediation efforts, as this step aims to express Algeria's readiness to contribute to mediation efforts and do everything in its power to help restore peace and stability in the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Great Lakes region. And by presiding over the United Nations Security Council during the month of January, Algeria achieved significant results that were praised by many observers and international experts. And under the supervision of the President of the Republic, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, Algerian diplomacy was able to put on the table several issues and challenges that threaten peace and security in the world, with the Arab and African issues at the spotlight. Rania Al-Bahri.
Security Council in January, Algeria stayed true to its diplomatic principles of supporting just causes and the right of peoples to decide their own fate. During its presidency, Algeria held several emergency meetings to address urgent issues, with a special focus on the situation in the occupied Palestinian territories, making it a top priority.
This is why Algeria raised several important issues at the UN, especially the Palestinian question, calling for a ceasefire, the delivery of food aid to Palestinians, and an end to the genocide.
Despite a challenging regional and international context, Algeria successfully managed its presidency through active and dynamic diplomacy.
Algeria has been able to conclude a successful presidency in early 2025, focusing the international community on a number of large issues like Gaza and Ukraine, and a number of smaller issues like terrorist financing and the Libyan Investment Authority.
Algeria played a central and positive role during its presidency. The Libyan people appreciated Algeria's efforts to help bring stability and unite different sides in the Libyan conflict.
Algeria has established itself as the voice of Africa at the Security Council.
Algeria is a strong supporter of the African structures and works to develop the continent through initiatives like the African Union. Algeria is committed to fight terrorism and has shown leadership in promoting peace and stability. For example, Algeria even banned the French military flights over its airspace in relation to this situation in Niger.
The Algerian presidency of the Security Council has been marked by significant achievements, including the promotion of international law as the main reference for resolving crises and conflicts.
And the European Court of Justice ruling struck down the European Union-Morocco agreements in Western Sahara for good this time, reaffirming the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination and recognizing the Polisario Front as their legitimate representative. Najah Tayyar explains.
In a landmark decision and following the ruling from last October, the Council of the European Union has officially annulled the trade and fisheries agreements linking Europe to Morocco in the occupied territories of Western Sahara, and by that the European Court of Justice reaffirmed fundamental principles of the international law, including the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination and the illegality of any agreement affecting Western Sahara without the consent of its inhabitants. The court also recognized the Polisario Front as the legitimate representative of the Sahrawi people, granting it the right to challenge any agreement that threatens their resources and sovereignty. Additionally, products from the Western Sahara will now require distinct labeling, separate from those of Morocco, further confirming the legal status of the territory under the aegis of the United Nations. This decision marks a significant political shift in Brussels, reinforcing the international legal framework surrounding the Western Sahara.
Important step in establishing direct contact with the sole legitimate representative of the Sahrawi people, the Polisario Front. This breakthrough took shape during a session organized last Tuesday in the European Parliament in the presence of a delegation representing the Polisario Front in order to listen to its point of view on the decisions of the Court of Justice of the European Union. The Sahrawi delegation expressed the Polisario Front's willingness to engage in dialogue and direct negotiations with the European Union. This is based on respect for the decisions of the European Court of Justice. This orientation was confirmed by a legal opinion from the legal service of the Council of the European Union, which unequivocally reaffirmed the need for the European Union to comply with the decisions of the European Court of Justice.
The European Council acknowledged that the European Union's highest judicial body had definitively annulled the application of the agreements in Western Sahara, describing this as a victory for the international justice and the legitimate struggle of the Sahrawi people. This decision remained unaffected by the Mahsen regime's attempts to portray it as a diplomatic success, a narrative it failed to impose. The Belgian diplomat Bernard Quinten had previously reaffirmed his country's commitment to the international legitimacy in a clear and unequivocal statement, despite efforts to distort the reality of the ruling. The European Council upheld the principles set by the court, reinforcing the legal foundation of the decision.
And representing the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, the Speaker of the National People's Assembly, Ibrahim Boughali, and during his speech in the third edition of Dialogues on Prosperity for Africa 2025, the Speaker conveyed the President's greetings to the President of Ghana and the participants, commending the efforts deployed by Ghana to host such event. Boughali affirmed that Algeria is paying significant attention to inter-African cooperation, a platform for strategic African economy. He has also stressed Algeria's commitment to support peace and security in Africa as two essential factors in establishing sustainable development, and reaffirmed Algeria's support towards Sahrawi people for self-determination. Let's have a listen to him.
Algeria, and within the framework of its vision for the future of Africa, has always placed African-African cooperation at the forefront of its strategy. President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, grants great importance to the African continent, considered as a strategic depth of Algeria and guarantee of its security and stability is in fact its priority. He also works to achieve this commitment on real ground through many initiatives that aims at enhancing economic, trade, political and cultural cooperation with the countries of the continent.
إلى تعزيز التعاون الاقتصادي والتجاري والسياسي والثقافي مع دول القارة.
Léon Landini, one known opposition figure in France, speaks out strongly against the country's current policies, especially its far-right views. He openly criticized the praise given to controversial figures. His statements have sparked strong reactions, as his main goal is to defend a France that is true to its values of freedom and human rights. Rania Al-Bahri.
Léon Landini is 98 years old. He was a former French resistance fighter and a communist activist who bravely fought against fascism during World War II. He is one of the most outspoken critics of France's current political direction. He strongly criticized the government's extremist position and expressed discontent with Jean-Marie Le Pen, a well-known torturer who recently passed away.
Je suis content d'être là.
Yes, I am glad to be here, but I'm not happy to be here with Le Pen. I fought hard in the Congress for the movement. I opposed them. Back then, there were officers in dangerous situations, and some were even part of the Gestapo. Some of the National Front leaders were also involved. After the liberation, there were military leaders and officers in the German army.
Léon Landini's harsh statements against French policy have sparked strong criticism from French politicians and the media. They find his point of view unacceptable, and some people have even called for a boycott of Léon Landini.
Il est responsable des premiers du Front National.
These people were leaders and ministers of the National Front, including Le Pen, who was known for his violence against Algerians. But in other parts of France, for the sake of the well-being and freedom, we cannot accept someone who supports fascism. We ask anyone who knows fascism, they understand the dictatorship of these people. It should be feared and fought against with all our strength. First, you need to have a weapon like mine, and even at my age, I will stand at the front and not allow them to tell me anything about Arabs.
Despite his bold positions, Léon Landini has been seen as dangerous by some people, but he's not alone in opposing the current French policy. Even though it doesn't always act that way, he wished for France to maintain its image as protector of freedom and human rights.
And France always is facing severe economic crisis with bankruptcy and growing concerns over the impact of high taxes and regulations on its industrial sector at the top. Najah Tayar.
France's largest business leaders are up in arms over the surtax included in the Finance Bill 2025, approved on January 31st. This measure will increase corporate income tax by up to 40%, aiming to generate 8 billion euros for the government. Many CEOs have criticized this as an excessive tax burden, warning of potential factory relocations and massive job losses. According to them, the surtax would significantly harm the competitiveness of the French market.
It's a bit unbelievable, so we're going to tax the local production to cool down energies, which is hardly a better way to encourage delocalization. So I don't know if this is really the government's objective, but in any case, they're going to achieve it. We've offered them other solutions, but bureaucracy prevented using them. And that's why we should do what they do in the US and appoint someone to loosen up democracy a bit. But as soon as we try to do that, we get sued. It's impossible.
France's industrial sector is facing a critical situation, as the General Confederation of Labour has been warning for several months now. Nearly 300,000 workers are at risk of losing their jobs, with more than 300 redundancy plans currently in progress. The union continues to sound the alarm over what it describes as a disastrous state of industry in the country.
France is considered as the most deindustrializing country in Europe. We are in a context where we practice social, fiscal and environmental dumping. There are very few anti-dumping measures applied by the European Commission in any case. I think we're going to be in a new era of economic development, a very regional one. North America and Asia, we risk being caught in a vice between these two blocks. Eventually, they'll dump their products here and will be professional donut sellers and Eiffel Tower visitors.
Waves of job losses are multiplying across France, heavily impacting the country amid an increasingly difficult economic and social climate. Recently, Michelin company announced the closure of 2 factories in Vannes and Cholet, resulting in the loss of over 1,200 jobs. The business leaders denounced an overload of taxes, regulations and constraints contributing to this crisis. In 2024, more than 66,000 companies went bankrupt, marking the highest number since 2009. And many of these redundancies often go unnoticed by the French media.
And as part of efforts to ensure the sustainability of water resources and fulfill President Abdelmajid Tebboun's commitment to water security, Sonatrach has successfully completed its first desalinated water production operation using reverse osmosis at the Cap Blanc seawater desalination plant in Oran province. This is part of the national complementary program to establish 5 major desalination plants. As for the Oran plant, it is with a capacity of 300,000 cubic meters per day, offering by that drinking water to 3 million people. And following the death of former journalist of Algeria's press service agency Mohamed Bakir, the presidency's communication directorate expresses its sincere condolences and deepest sympathy to the family of the deceased, praying Almighty Allah to welcome him in his vast paradise and give patience and comfort to his family. To Allah we belong, and to him we shall return. The presidency's communication director extends its sincere condolences to the family of Al Jamhuriya Daily's journalist Hiziyat Lamsi, expressing deep sympathy and praying Allah Almighty to grant the deceased His holy mercy and give patience and comfort to her family. To Allah we belong, and to Him we shall return. For his part, the Minister of Communication extended his heartfelt condolences to the families of the late former journalist of Algeria's press service agency, Mohamed Bakir, and the late journalist Hiziyat Lamsi, praying Allah to grant them His mercy. To Allah we belong indeed, and to Him we shall return. The funeral of the war veteran Ismail Mahfoud, a member of the National Council of the Revolution, was held today following his passing at the age of 104. It was attended by the Minister of War Veterans, the late veteran's family, and several fellow mujahideen and comrades in the struggle. The occupied Palestinian territory is now on the 40th day of the ceasefire agreement, and as part of the 4th prisoner exchange, the Zionist occupation released 183 Palestinian detainees, while the resistance released 3 captives. And for the first time in over a year, more than 50 wounded Palestinians were evacuated from the Gaza Strip through the Rafah crossing. And in order to strengthen ties of brotherhood and solidarity with the Palestinian people and within Algeria's firm principles of support for the Palestinian cause, a solidarity convoy comprising 170 tons of aid, including food, medical supplies, bedding and tents, was launched from Jijil province. That was it for today's news. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.